Good evening. Today is June the 3rd. Right now it's 7:30, and I'm calling to order this evening's meeting of the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission. For the benefit of those who have not participated in a Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, our procedures are as follows. The Secretary will read the legal notice of the meeting as published in local newspapers. The applicant will be invited to come forward to present the case, explaining to the Commission and others present what is being requested of the property. Comments of town agencies will be read for each application if there are any. First, there'll be clarifying questions from the Commissioners, and then there'll be an opportunity for clarifying questions from the audience. Next, we'll ask those who want to support the application to come forward. Second, we'll ask those who oppose the application to come forward. As this is a public meeting and must be recorded, it will be necessary for speakers to identify themselves by stating their name and address before addressing the Commission. The applicant will then be free to leave or remain for the balance of the public hearing and the regular meeting, during which time the Commission will try to reach a decision on each application. Each applicant will be notified in writing as to the decision of the Commission and has the right to appeal to Superior Court if desired. Decisions of this meeting are available the day after the meeting at 203-453-8039 after 9 a.m. Seated tonight are the following members of the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission. We have Frank D'Andrea, Josh Hirschman, I'm Rich Meyer, Walter Corbiere, Phil Johnson, Ray Bauer, George Underhill, Tom Cost, Richard Wallace, and Richard Hudson. Mr. Secretary, where are you? There you are. Would you please read the legal notice?
Yes, sir. Legal notice, Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission. Notice is hereby given that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing on June 3rd, 2015 at 7:30 p.m. at Nathaniel B. Green Community Center, 32 Church Street, Guilford, Connecticut, in the Whitfield Room, first floor, for the following purposes. 1. Bernard and Sandra Lombardi, 70 Reeves Avenue, map 9, lot 76, zone R2, 44 BSF, 440 square foot addition to house on a lot less than 10,000 square feet, section 273-15G, article 9, 273.99, continued to June 17. 2. Amend zoning code 273-2, table 5, and add 273-96 to allow bulk propane facilities by special permit in I1 and I2 zones, and delete from 273-21C provisions allowing propane storage in the CD zone, second hearing. And 3, create new zoning district, mixed use conservation 3, first hearing, dated at Guilford, Connecticut, this 25th day of May, 2015. Richard Meyer, Chairman.
Thank you very much. During this meeting, the regular members are all in attendance, and so we will all be sitting, and the alternates will join in the conversation but cannot vote. There are 7. Okay, good. Can I get a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Bernard and Sandra Lombardi. Oh, this is tabled? Or, yeah, it's continued. All right, so can I get a motion to continue it? There you
Second.
go. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so here it is. Can I get a motion to open up the propane issue?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm going to recuse myself.
Josh Hirschman is going to recuse himself. And who were we? Did you participate in the last meeting? You were on the last meeting. You're up. So George Underhill is going to go. All right. So George, do you have anything to throw at this?
No, just point out this is the second hearing on the subject.
Okay, this is the second hearing on the subject, so we can take action on this. And there are going to be a couple actions. I'm going to explain to the audience exactly how we're going to vote, on which things we're going to vote, not how we're going to vote. So there are going to be 3 separate parts. There's going to be a vote on a change in the wording for the property, which we keep referring to as a Montana property. It's on Route 1 on the west side of town. So we're going to decide whether or not we want to get rid of that first. Then we're going to discuss the definition portion of it and vote on the definition portion of it as to how we want to define distribution versus storage. And then last but not least, we'll vote on the proposed wording from our planning committee, which is why I guess you're here. So, all right, so who wants to kick this off? Do we have anything the commissioners want to add? Anything we want to say, or do I just want to open it up to the public? And I'm going to ask a favor, if we could maintain, for the size of this crowd, a 5-minute limit on what we want to say. I would appreciate it so we can move the meeting along well. We all agreed? It's okay with you? Okay, good. All right, so is there anyone who would like to tell us anything about their vision or view about propane in this town? Come on down. If you want to come to the podium, this way we can get you on camera too. And just tell us who you are and where you're from. And
Good evening, members. Is it on?
let me give you mine. That's for the videotape. This is so everyone can hear you.
Okay, so this one's just recording and that one's amplification. Okay.
That's great.
Yeah, I always love microphones. All right. Good evening, members of the commission. My name is Keith Ainsworth. Some of you may have seen me before, but I see a lot of new faces. I'm an attorney with Evans, Feldman, and Ainsworth in New Haven, at 261 Bradley Street. I actually live in Madison, so I'm a neighbor, but I have the privilege of representing Village Victoria Condominium Association tonight, and who are neighbors to one of the zones that you're changing the text for. And of course, they would be an affected party. And I've had the interesting experience of representing a number of parties involved in propane issues, both in Clinton and in North Branford, very recently. So I'm up to speed on a lot of the issues surrounding it. And I only say that just because I want to let you know that I speak from knowledge, although I won't claim to be a technical expert. While the language that you proposed is neutral on its face, the actual effect is that it is going to be somewhat poor planning, or it's going to have some negative effects. By changing the language of that zone, you're basically inviting in an explosive gas. It's not like anything else that you can store. I mean, if you store gasoline and it gets loose, you can contain it. You can put secondary containment. It goes into the container, and you can suck it back out. If it goes into the ground, there are ways to contain that as well, although problems. But when gas gets out, and if it ignites, it can cause a fairly substantial blast. So you're inviting in a fairly dangerous use, and you have to be careful about how you do that. I think the first thing I'd like to address, and I actually drafted up my own modification of some of the language you used, and I'd like to hand that out. I apologize, I only have 7 copies for you and 1 for me, and I know that's short of the number of people sitting at the table. But the 4 acres that you've got sounds like it's very protective, but unless you specify that the gas has to be stored in the center of that property, the only thing that is a buffer is the 100-foot setback. And so you could have a half-acre parcel and you'd have the same buffer. You know, because your buffer is only 100 feet from the property line, 4 acres doesn't do much, except one side may have a very large buffer and one side may have a very small buffer. So things like that seem like they're false protection. And it certainly gives my clients a little bit of concern that they're a neighboring residential use. They're pre-existing. They've been there since 1987 at least. And they have, I think, a right to expect that what the Planning and Zoning Commission does, it's fine to invite new businesses in, but I think you have to do so carefully and in a way that does not negatively impact the pre-existing residential uses. Residential uses are your highest and most important protected use. Everything else is secondary. I understand that tax revenue is one of the major reasons why we invite new businesses into a community. But in this case, you may be inviting in a property use that has a negative value impact on the neighboring residential uses, because people are legitimately concerned about the impacts, and that can have a distinct impact on their property values, which will then reduce property values or tax revenues that they generate. And so it may be counterintuitive to what you may be thinking. In addition, 30,000 gallons, I said that you should limit it to no more than 30,000 gallons total cumulative, just to make sure that no one's saying that I've got a facility here and then somewhere else on the property another facility. You want to make sure that you absolutely are putting a cap on it. 30,000 itself is a fairly significant amount. We did some measurements in Clinton when they were considering the 500,000 facility, but they were 30,000 gallon individual tanks. And the blast radius for those, should there be a catastrophic event, is quite significant. It's well over 1,500 feet. And that's one of the other things I suggest in here is that you put a 1,500-foot buffer, not a 100-foot buffer, if you want to have real a safety factor. I understand that the NFPA 58, the gas code, applies, but it's a very, very basic level of protection, and communities are allowed to go beyond that. You can't go looser than the feds or the state, but you can go more strict. And in debating this with other shoreline communities, the distinct suggestion has been to put a little bit more of a safety factor in, because all they're thinking about is the interaction between various tanks and putting enough space between them so that you can get vehicles in. And on that point, because you're inviting in a distribution facility, that invites in various 900-gallon distribution trucks, but it also invites in the delivery trucks, which are fairly substantial, 12 or 30,000-gallon delivery tank. And those itself, each one of those is its own potential hazard. And not all of those are going to be existing trucks that are already delivering to Guilford homes. They're going to be ones coming from neighboring communities because this is a distribution facility. So those are all very distinct concerns that my clients have. And in addition, NFPA 58 does allow you to put in something like a blast protection device, basically either an earthen berm or a blast wall. You can do it with basically brick block, and put in something that will deflect an explosion upward as opposed to letting it go straight out. And we put that into North Branford's regs, and I'll say the analysis on that, it's allowed under NFPA 58 if you do it with a sound fire protection analysis, and you'll see my language in there that I suggest, says that as long as you have an engineer who makes sure that the blast protection berm doesn't contain the gas, you leave gaps at various points, the gas, if it leaks, can dissipate, so there's no explosion hazard, but you do keep out you break up the explosion pattern. Those are sensible things that you can do that add a little bit more detail. All you've done here is you've said, we're permitting large amounts of bulk storage gas. And although you have the special permit process, I think you ought to have some greater consideration for the neighboring residential properties. While it's one of your performance standards for special permit, that's quite a bit more subjective than I think would make everyone comfortable, to be quite blunt about it. So I guess to come to a general conclusion, I've got some suggestions that tighten up the language, and I think you ought to consider adding in some more distinct performance standards, because otherwise, if they meet your requirements, even on a special permit, you don't have a lot of discretion to deny them. And you know, yes, that benefits a business. Yes, it brings in revenue, but it also brings in harm. And if you can't control, once it's been permitted, you really don't have a lot of control over it. And like I said, NFP 58 goes so far, but it has a lot of options in it that you can trigger. And I think triggering some of those options, like requiring blast protection, and I know you've got a mounding requirement, but mounding still has an exposed top, so it still has an explosion lateral hazard. And that's not a full protection. Whereas if you have a catastrophic event, it may be rare, but when it does happen, you want to have something there that is protective. So in the absence of some major renovations to the language, my clients would urge the Commission to deny or reject the application as it is. But I've made some suggestions that if you really believe that this is absolutely necessary for Guilford, we believe that there's some very sensible provisions that you can put in here that will be protective.
Great. Cool. Victor.
Victor Anatra, 2614 Boston Post Road, Guilford. It's been an extreme volumes of testimony regarding propane storage facilities, etc. The three issues that are coming up this evening The most important one is the definition. Once you properly define what bulk propane storage is, then that definition will drive the direction of the regulation. And basically, according to the Planning and Zoning book, the purpose of the Planning and Zoning Commission is the purpose of the regulations to promote health, safety, and general welfare of the community, to encourage the most appropriate use of the land, to lessen congestion in the streets, to avoid undue concentration of the population, to make adequate provision for public utilities and facilities, to provide adequate light, air, and recreation facilities, to secure safety from fire, panic, flood, and other dangers, to maintain or improve the quality of the environment of the community, and to conserve property values in the town of Guilford. That is your mission as the Planning and Zoning Commission. And part of your responsibility is to define what is and what is not. Under your regulation, where 273-2, word usage and definitions, it states, the words used in these regulations shall have the meaning commonly attributed to them. Doubts as to their precise meaning, application, or interpretation shall be determined by you, the Commission, in accordance with the purpose and intent of these regulations where the context so permits. We're talking about bulk propane storage. Everyone in this room has probably a barbecue, probably heats their home or whatever with propane. And that propane comes from where? From a storage tank on your property. That is the clear, simple definition of bulk propane storage. Now, if we look at the word meanings, bulk means a mass or volume of goods, large quantities compared with smaller amounts packaged. A bulk would be a large amount of product not packaged. That could be when you go to Costco and you buy bulk something, it's usually more than one. Storage, a space where you put something when it's not being used. It's the action or method of storing something for future use. Limiting the size of tanks or a cap on propane is not the issue. The issue is the use and how it is stored. Example, we do have thousands of pounds of propane used in the entire town, as I just stated. A school or a factory or residential development may want to power up with propane where natural gas is not available, and it should be allowed. We have many examples of schools that have taken 30,000-gallon propane tanks, have buried them, but they specifically use that as storage for the fuel and heat of that facility. They are not turning around and redistributing it. It's simply bulk propane storage. Another example, the Guilford School system heats its building with home heating oil and has a large 5,000-gallon above-ground tank. Don't you think a buried tank would be safer? What if all gas stations had above-ground tanks? Would that be safer or more dangerous? The question and point is the proposed retail and bulk storage, the matter of storage and a bulk propane facility are two different situations. For example, is the proposed retail and bulk storage facility able to fill propane-powered vehicles, cars, truck, etc., similar to a gas station? Is bulk propane storage facility with retail sales the same as a bulk propane terminal or plant? A terminal can have storage, but does that mean a storage container is a terminal? There's two types of operations, bulk storage and retail sales of bulk propane plants or terminals. The plants and terminals are different because they redistribute the propane either by bobtail trucks, tractor trailers, forklift trucks are in the yard, flatbed trucks, service trucks, massive storage of propane, inventory tanks. If you want to buy propane from these facilities, they stockpile 20-pound tanks, 33-pound tanks, 500-pound tanks, 420-pound tanks, 1,000-gallon tanks. Usually a 24-hour operation, backup alarms on all vehicles, constant transfer of propane truck to truck. The NPGA, which is the National Propane Gas Association, they even define a bulk plant as a facility where the primary function is to store LP gas prior for further distribution. That's a difference from just bulk propane storage. By simply changing the definition or clarifying the definition, right now, bulk propane storage facility or terminal is not allowed anywhere in Guilford. So if we clarify the definition, it automatically takes the issue off the table. It may sound like an oversimplification, but that's what it is. All you have to do is clearly define what it is, vote on it, and bulk propane facilities disappear unless you write another regulation allowing such a thing. But that's another issue that you're going to be discussing. Thank you.
Thanks, Victor. Who else would like to speak? Come on.
My name is Frank Cuspa, K-U-S-Z-P-A, 2 Village, Victoria Drive here in Guilford. I'll be kind of short and sweet because I can go on and on about how unsafe most people feel. We're concerned about our property values as well. And I think the bottom line is, as I look at Guilford, I lived in Madison for 30 years before moving to Guilford. And I just didn't really move here because I want to be known as the town with the most propane in the entire state. We already have that dubious award, and I don't see any need, quite honestly, for this adding any more facilities. So I just really like to see us go back to just say that no more is needed because we already have the honor of being the highest one here. So it's just my concern from my property value, my insurance, and just having that in my neighborhood. It's not only the tanks and how you do it. I'm very concerned about the trucks and vehicles and the way you move it, because it's just like taking an airplane. When you fly, the takeoff and landing is the most dangerous part. And with propane, it's the moving of the liquid from one state to one vessel to another vessel. And this facility is going to be doing it all the time. So while you have a school, as someone mentioned, or a restaurant that has a larger propane tank in the back, they get filled up, once a month or whatever time periods. It's not during the day. That's all that's happening at that facility is multiple dangerous acts. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandra, come on up.
Sandra D. at 5 Jamestown Drive, Guilford. Thank you, Chairman Meyer, Commissioners. I spoke at length at the last public hearing, so I do not want to take any more of your time than necessary, but you were kind enough to accept 2 more correspondences from me this week, and in those correspondences I mentioned to you I wanted to give you the authoritative documentation that support those correspondences. So I have for you tonight to submit for the record NFPA 858-based fire safety analysis manual for LP gas storage facilities. And this correspondence that I'm relating to has to do with my concern for, in the CD zone where bulk storage is currently allowed, my consideration and opinion that it's inappropriate for bulk propane storage facilities in that CD location as it's currently allowed. I'm also submitting to you the new State of Connecticut Fire Prevention Code. Also concerns I have about an entity that's across the street. I have their Form 990 indicating their nonprofit status and their mission. As to institutional occupancy, I believe that they qualify under the fire safety analysis document and guidance. The Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development regulations as it applies to community development block grants, and in anticipation if the town ever gets grant monies in that regard, that documentation has a propane example as to appropriate distances that any funded HUD property should be from. Also, Department of Homeland Security, I had 2 conversations with them over the course of the last year and a half, and I have the top screen document that would be required to be filled out for any facility that has 60,000 pounds of propane, which there's a conversion factor, and basically an 18,000 gallon tank would convert into about 60,000 pounds. I have the EPA's Emergency Planning and Community Right to Know Act document, which also refers to the Risk Management Guide for Propane Storage Facilities. And in my third correspondence, which really applied mostly to risk and trying to mitigate all risks, I have some documentation on risk matrices. I have also references to the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities workshops based on risk and other documentation that guides towns. I have Connecticut's regulation of propane, which was a document that was produced in May of 2011 by the state as an independent, objective observation of the regulation of Connecticut's propane industries. Also submitted a few local incidents for just your identification of the expense and the cost of response efforts. There is a Killingworth and a Madison incident, as well as our Guilford incident that happened in 2006 with a tanker rollover. And lastly, NFPA also reported a tanker rollover incident and what can ensue, either levee and vapor cloud issues. So I also wanted to tell you distracted driving and so many risks that would be involved, especially along Route 1 in the CD zone. So I just wanted to submit that for you for the record. Thank you for your patience.
And thank you for your letters. We appreciate them. We've all read them. So thank you. Who else?
Hello, I'm Karen Flatley. I live at 21 Village, Victoria. When I started looking at this, I went to the Planning Commission meeting, and I listened, they had come up with this document apparently, and I listened to what they were saying, how they were trying to make things better for us by enacting this or suggesting this zone change. And I looked at a lot of things that were missing from their document. For example, it says 30,000 gallon tank, but you can have trucks. You could have 5, 6 trucks that have 10, 15, 1,000 gallons in them, and they're not counted in the 30,000. I asked about how many of these 4-acre zones can you have in the I-2 areas? And the answer was, well, the market will guide that. Well, that's not an answer. What if you have, 3, 4 zones? There are several of them down at the end of Soundview, right next to each other. But luckily, there are no houses nearby. We looked at how far it was from a residence. These zones were created in 1960. It's a long time ago. In that time, many houses have developed in the I-2 zone and on the edge of the I-2 zone. What if one of these 4-acre zones is 100 feet from one of these houses? Would you want to be living in that house? There were just so many things that just didn't cover completely what was happening. And my thought is, if you're going to create a zone change and you're going to say these things are not allowed, all the other things are, by implication, allowed. And those things are not acceptable. And then I found out that we have 120,000 plus storage already in Guilford. And no neighboring community, not Clinton, not Madison, not Branford, none of them have that kind of storage. Why would we feel that we need to have additional storage? It just doesn't seem to be the right thing to do. Now, I have from my husband, who unfortunately had to go to my grandchild's band concert today, some documents from the Office of the Secretary of HUD that talks about how dangerous propane is and how far, they're talking about how far it needs to be, 1,500 feet from any dwelling. I'm going to give these to you. I'm sure you have all this. These propane hearings have been going on now for a number of years. I know you all work very hard. You're here sitting at hearings week after week, and I sympathize with you. You must be sick of hearing about this. But the decisions you make to satisfy the need for a few businessmen to have more propane will affect Guilford for 20, 30, 40 years. And you really need to be thoughtful about what you do. And I hope your decision is to deny propane, any more propane. We've got enough. Thank you.
Who else? Oh, I got a hand.
Add to your...
Hi, good evening. John Buckley, 14 Village Victoria. Everything I learned about the commission was actually by watching the town TV show where the recordings were. And I have absolutely no understanding of propane, how to keep it safe, all this type of thing. But the last meeting was very instructive to me. I saw 3 basic principles that were being promoted by the board. One with the commission. One was listening to the people, protecting property rights, and economic development of the town. Well, you've been hearing from the people for 6 years. They don't want it. They don't want it in neighboring towns. I think that's unequivocal. Protecting property rights, well, in I-1 and I-2, they've never had this. So why would they want it now? I think you could actually be damaging some of the property values in I-1 and I-2. There's large business offices. There could be daycare centers. There can be all kinds of facilities in an I-1 and I-2, and I bet they wouldn't appreciate having a bulk propane storage facility next to their office. And 3, everyone that's come up here says this is not really going to bring, not everyone, but economic development to the town. We hear it's going to cost the town money, and it's going to impair property values, and it's going to raise insurance. So to me, this is a lose-lose-lose for Guilford. So just please vote no. Let's end this 6-year debate, which has not been constructive for the town. I haven't been here for 6 years. But a lady brought this issue up at the last meeting. She said nothing new has been discussed. Nothing new will be discussed. This just should be stopped. Thank you.
Who else? Somebody else? See a hand way in the back.
Hi, I'm Sherry Kraus from 209 Goose Lane. I'm not going to talk long. Basically everything that everybody said so far up here I agree with. We have farms and a lot of residents that use propane because of the inability to run natural gas. But we've done okay so far, and I don't really think that we need to outsource, or since we don't need outsourcing, why do more propane? So I don't think we should allow it. We don't need any more propane storage in Guilford. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I see a hand.
Sue Shackford, 3 Village Victoria Drive. First of all, everything everybody said before, I absolutely agree with. The second thing is that when I bought my home 20 years ago, I looked the area over, and I had 3 choices of homes in different areas of Connecticut. And I chose Guilford and the shoreline for everything that Guilford stood for all the years that I came down here as a young person. And then I've owned my home for 20 years. And having bulk storage in the area at the time, I know would have deterred me from buying there. We buy our homes with good grace of looking at what zoning is, what's in the area. And then every time we turn around, we're looking to change it to something else, to invite other things that don't belong in a residential community. The second thing that I kept thinking about was, why do we need more propane tank? Well, how many businesses along the shoreline that are outside of Guilford do they provide the propane for? And they should be looked at to be in other communities besides just a little town of Guilford. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Would someone else like to speak? I see a hand.
Good evening. Shadi Wazali, 377 Goose Lane. Shadi Wazali, 377 Goose Lane. For me, this is not hypothetical on a couple of counts. One is I have the distinction of looking across the street on one of these properties. And recently we went through a reevaluation of the value of our home. And one of the negatives, we bought in 2011. It was actually a very good price, but we've seen it decline. And one of them was this property across the street was seen as a potential negative. So folks are talking about potential property values declining. Well, my bank tells me my house is not worth as much because of that property. And I believe that if you put the propane in anywhere in the vicinity, it's only going to get worse. We moved to Guilford because of what it is, not anticipating this kind of thing. The other thing, talking more technically on the actual proposals, setbacks and so on, I think you've heard several folks saying you need to really build in more safety if you are going to allow these things. Oh, we've heard 100 foot, 150 feet. To me, if my 10-year-old can throw a baseball at it from where I'm standing, it's too close. So as you go through this and, both counts, please, consider giving us a little more room and keeping it a safer and more suitable place to live and own a home. Thank you.
Sir, does that, I just had one question about the property across the street being seen as a negative in general. As you know, tonight we're also considering this MUC3 zone, which has a likely application to that same property. Does that also hold any concern for you, positive or negative in any way?
I actually probably would speak in favor of that. It was the fact that it was unknown, it was kind of getting run down, that was seen, or the propane. If it's built up as a condominium complex that's reasonable and attractive, I think, personally, I wouldn't be objecting to it. I don't know what an appraiser would say, but at least the unknown is gone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Who else would like to speak? No? Elsa Green. Come on down.
You can see that far?
Far away is not the problem. It's anywhere near here, I can't see. You wait. You'll see me in 40 years.
I won't.
Elsa Green, 33 Kenneth Circle. We've been around and around with propane for so long, pitting River Street people against Moose Hill Road people against Goose Lane people. And the fact of the matter is that I don't imagine there are very many people who believe we should have the capacity of storage that we already have, let alone what we would be looking at for some additional facility and terminals. I hope that maybe this can be decided according to what people are wanting, the people that have turned out time after time, year after year at this point, saying no. And that's what elected representatives are supposed to decide, to make what people want to have done happen. I hope that this is finally coming to an end and this can be a peaceful resolution. Thank you.
Who else?
Ed Dinsey, 2751 Boston Post Road. I just want to piggyback on what Elsa said. I mean, this has been pitting one group against another. If nothing else, is there a possibility of sending this before the voters without deciding I-1, I-2 tonight, let the people decide, and then if people want it, go back into planning, put a little more thought into it. Just my thoughts.
Thank you. Who else would like to speak?
Marie DeFelice, Jamestown Drive, 128 Jamestown Drive. And I'm actually going to repeat a couple of things, but I just want to state it very, very simply, because I'm kind of a simple-minded person. Just plain and simple. The politicians, the agencies, the commissions in this town are created to, one, to listen to the majority of the people. You have seen the majority of the people over and over again, and that's been said. And also stated that I state that politicians, commissions, agencies, etc., are here for the safety and well-being of all of Guilford. So when you make your decisions, please think of that. Not the well-being of one person or a few people, but the well-being of the general public. Do the right thing. I think that's the moral thing to do.
Thank you. Would anyone else? I got a hand. Come on up.
My name is Joe Ferraro, and I'm at 8 Village Victoria. I didn't have prepared remarks. Actually, it's the first time I've attended any session relative to the propane storage issue. And I am the type of person that is very analytical, and clearly there are emotional statements being made here, and they're valid. But I tend to look more on the academic side. And so what I heard tonight that compelled me to stand up and to make a statement was Victor's analysis. And that is that the charge that the Planning and Zoning Commission has is to represent the residents and the residencies before anything else. I hope that you're going to take that charge into heavy consideration before you make any further decisions about something that clearly is controversial relative to its danger, and that you will view the residents of the town of Guilford as having primary importance over a business. Thank you.
My name is Karen Tendler, and I'm a resident of 14 Village Victoria. Can you hear me? Oh, thank you. Sorry. So I'm here to express my objection to the proposed amendment. In the words of the proposed amendment, the storage and distribution of propane has the potential to be hazardous and to have an adverse impact on residential areas. And as you know, the current allowed uses of zones of I-1 and I-2 zones today don't allow such dangerous uses, and neither should they. In fact, they allow for fairly benign uses, things like medical and dental clinics, hospitals, urgent care facilities, schools, universities, and daycare facilities, to list a few. So the thought that you would introduce a bulk propane storage facility to be next to any one of these already approved uses where people have invested time and money, to me is kind of absurd. As Guilford has developed and become more residential, the I-1 and I-2 zones have become closer to where people live, work, and shop. In fact, our home is probably, 800 feet away from the potential I-1 zone, I-1, I-2 zone. It's therefore mystifying to me that the Planning and Zoning Committee would consider rule changes that would literally put people's homes and lives in danger. And this danger cannot be contained or dismissed. Human errors are always possible, and unfortunately in today's environment, so are acts of terrorism. So as you consider this proposal, I would respectfully request that you think about what you've heard today and over the past 6 years about what the residents who elect our officials are saying to you, the board, who are appointed by these elected officials. Take to heart what they're saying and make the right decision, which is do not allow more bulk propane storage in I-1 or I-2 zones or anywhere else in Guilford for that matter. So thank you.
Joe Nugent, 423 New Whitfield Street. If this proposed amendment does not pass, my question to the board is the door still open that would allow the garaging and parking overnight or any period of time of transportation vehicles, i.e. bobcats, bobtails, and 12,000-gallon tankers? Can they sit on the property in the I-1 and I-2 zones? They are not storage. They're transportation vehicles. That's my question to the board.
Anyone else?
Anthony Polini, 2556 Boston Post Road. Just want to say that everyone that has spoke, you can repeat that and repeat that by every individual here. And I hope, as they have previously said, that you listen to them, you take it at the heart, and you're looking for the safety of the community. Just one other question that I have here underneath propane bulk facilities. You mentioned pipelines as a distribution. That's kind of very broad. Does that mean that we can have propane pipelines out in the street under or over the natural gas pipelines? Does it mean that the pipelines go from 4 acres to 4 acres, or within those 4 acres? Where does the pipeline stop and start? That's it. Thank you.
Okay. One last chance. Oh, we got a hand.
Hi, Kate Scharf, 2804 Boston Post Road. I've been up here numerous times throughout the past year plus, so I'm not going to rehash and share with you all the statistics, all the facts, the concerns from a safety perspective, from my family, from the surrounding residents, to the traffic, to one-way on Moose Hill. What I'd like to do is just spend a minute with some of the things that have kind of stayed with me throughout hearing after hearing and listening to others. You know, the first one was, of course, my interest peaked in all of this with a spot zoning change, and that came after it originally was targeting River Street. So my question is, that was presented to the board, and it was denied, and the reasons given. Well, I don't understand why those reasons wouldn't hold true, especially when you are in an area that is the majority of businesses. And now, for example, at 2772 Boston Post Road, it's 3/4 of an acre, 0.79 of an acre, surrounded by all residential homes. The other thing is, I was in a hearing over a year ago, and there was a gentleman that spoke. Granted, it was for the propane. It was actually the IWC, but it really struck a chord with me. And the reason being that I can look on the internet, I can inquire all I want, but he got up and spoke. And he was a volunteer firefighter here in Guilford. And he shared with the board his grave concern. He was actually in the service. He's been in an area that had been hit with a propane explosion. No matter how much I read, and as close as I am, because I'm adjacent, I'm less than 800 feet from that property, it was mind-blowing to me that potentially, never mind the residents, the community, but our volunteer firefighters, our emergency personnel, we're talking that they can handle this, they can handle any kind of situation that might arise, and he was there saying, no, no, we can't. It's dangerous. So that has struck with me, and I just wanted to reiterate, I didn't do nearly as good a job as him, but coming from someone that's in the midst of that, that would actually be responding, that was very nerve-wracking to me. You know, the other thing that I just want to say is, I appreciate you opening this up and hearing. I agree with everybody here. You know, it has been emotional, but if you look at the statistics and from the course of the discussions and what has been presented, again, you know, that spot zoning change, and it has now snowballed into something much great, but I just plead that the right thing is done here and that we can move along from all of this. There's a lot more energy that needs to be spent in issues and concerns for families, not to be stressed with something as such. So, thank you.
My name is John Sunday, 6 Potter Hill Drive, and I am in opposition to the proposed amendment change to this zoning code. I just wanted to share with you, I haven't actually been through an explosion, but I've seen the results of one. I do business down in White Plains, Westchester County, and in July of 1994, a tanker truck carrying 9,200 gallons of propane veered off the road, hit a guardrail, and the tank and the tractor separated, and the tank hit a column on a bridge. When it hit that bridge, it was like a cruise missile, and it launched 300 feet into the air onto somebody's home in that area, incinerated 23 homes in a radius of 400 feet. The driver of the truck was killed. The bridge overpass began to melt and sag, and over the 20 years of the fire chief in the town, his comment was that this was the biggest explosion he's ever seen in 20 years in the department. The resulting financial impact was that the accident cost them over $17 million, resulting in property damage, decontamination cleanup, lawsuits, highway and bridge reconstruction, and emergency response expenses. I appreciate your service, and you can go down in Guilford history as the commission that had the best interests of the town at heart, or not. I sat through nearly 3.5 hours at the last meeting, and I left here thinking that you were more concerned with amphibians and reptiles because of the lighting from the rock pile than you are with our safety with propane. Thank you.
Hand in the back. Dawn.
Dawn Williams, 137 Jefferson Drive in Guilford. I am a member of the West End Homeowners Association, and I am sort of ambivalent about whether I am opposed or in agreement to this amendment. Obviously, being on the West End, I'd like to see it, the propane use taken out of our zone, the zone nearest to us, and the Montana property. I too was part of, I would say almost 2 years ago, this whole thing that started happening about Montana property. We have heard many folks come up in this very room. There was an engineer who spoke on propane explosions who had assured us that there would be a fire and it would be put out, and maybe we would lose some grass and everything would grow back, as if there was no problem. And that person spoke on behalf of a business that was interested in putting propane on the Montana property. So we've seen all different sides of the story. I feel for the board and what you have before you. I'd like to see it out of our zone. I don't want to see it impact folks near the industrial zones either. I feel sorry for the folks who live on Soundview Road because they have a huge propane storage facility down that way. But you've heard from everybody, you've heard about the concerns, and I think it's time now to, number one, not allow it in any of these zones, and number two, put a cap on it. That basically is what we want to see. We need to put a cap on it. We don't want to be seen as the propane capital of Connecticut anymore. It's time. Thank you.
Anyone else? Last chance, up.
In light of
Oh, please come down.
commenting,
Yep.
I heard I'm sorry if this is very unorthodox, but like you may all know, we are very emotional and very concerned about, we're very concerned about this subject. So I appreciate your time, and I also appreciate your service as well. I do know in attending meetings over the last year and a half, this is a lot of your time, it's a lot of your energy, and it's a very difficult decision. But I just wanted to speak. At the last public hearing, a lovely woman spoke about the town of Chester. And there was an application before the town of Chester in 2011, and this was a company called DSDM LLC, and they had a special exemption application in for two 30,000-gallon tanks at property at 25 Airport Industrial Park Road in Chester in an RLM zone, which is Research and Light Manufacturing District. This application was denied across the board by all the commissioners, and I just wanted to note to you the chairman of that commission, Chairman Joplin, his concern was that it was not in compliance with one of the zoning codes neighboring premises. And his thoughts were, enjoyment is whether the person living 400 to 500 feet away can continue to live without anxiety. Whether or not that anxiety is scientifically supported is in some sense irrelevant. It is still anxiety. And the chairman did not see how this would not affect the value of premises in the general neighborhood or level of enjoyment. And of course, their zoning regulations spoke to enjoyment in residential areas surrounding being able to enjoy their neighborhood. I also wanted to mention, also in those commission minutes, which I do have and I will submit to the committee, that another commissioner, Mr. Sanders, he does serve on the Town of Chester's Economic Development Commission, and he said the goals of the Economic Development Commission is to bring business to Chester, but there are subsidiary goals, and those are of the town's character and complementing existing businesses. So I do understand maybe we are in a state of flux where we're trying to balance the two. Economic development is very important, but also whether we're going through growing pains and we're all expounding on what we feel is proper may just be where we are. I just feel like we're losing our identity. The town of Guilford is just not sure who they are anymore. Also, I wanted to speak to the quantity of propane. Last public hearing, and as well, Attorney Ainsworth mentioned his service with the town of Clinton, and I was following that quite closely myself. My interest has certainly peaked over the last year and a half with all the area towns I mentioned to you, my following of the North Branford propane issue over the last few months. But in Clinton, a lovely woman there as well, Heather Clinton, proposed and gave to their commission an impact analysis of the proposed Clinton propane terminal. And in my readings, it seemed to be a very persuasive document to their commission. But in there, the woman who spoke at last public hearing mentioned the New Haven terminal of propane. Well, in Wethersfield as well, and in Plainfield, Connecticut, there's bulk facilities. And in the Connecticut's regulation document that I presented tonight, issued by the Connecticut Legislature, special review, independent analysis, that area bulk propane facilities, there's plenty of competition. The Connecticut regulation of propane document states there are currently 78 propane dealers registered with the Connecticut Department of Consumer Protection. Staff involved in this research, staff found an average of 11 propane dealers available per town or city in Connecticut. So I just wanted to iterate that to you in case there is some concern that we would have this shortage or we need to store it here for future uses. I do agree, I've heard about land use decisions made long ago. I had a conversation, correspondence with the Cheshire Town Planner. I had presented to you Cheshire zoning regulations last year and mentioned their I zones in the C3 heavy commercial zone. Method of approval adopted in 1970. It's not clear why. Reasons for inclusion of commercial storage and sale of propane, they're not apparent. It may have been developed and located to include a variety of uses that already existed by the time of adoption. This is not unusual. Zoning is a mid-20th century tool and general land use patterns already existed by the time of its use. So that was new knowledge to me and our zoning and how it has come to be. And maybe it just doesn't fit current needs and current wants. And also to speak to firefighters, I agree with Katie Sharp. I was here at that Inland Wetlands Committee meeting when the volunteer firemen spoke, and it was quite riveting. And I'm not quite sure, I believe it was not written in the minutes of that meeting. It may be on the tape, but I believe he actually responded to the Soundview 2006 incident, and his comment was he would never want to see anything like that ever again. And if I may, just lastly, in April of 2015, the April 6th edition of the New Haven Register, there was an article about more volunteer firefighters needed across the state. Volunteer fire departments across the state say they are suffering and do not have enough bodies to fill their positions and shifts. There are more than 26,000 firefighters in Connecticut, and less than 5,000 are career firefighters. The rest are volunteers. Volunteer departments all over the state are finding it difficult to get recruits, spelling bad news for every citizen in town. In Connecticut, 83% of the departments are volunteer and 80% of those are short-handed. That shortage could leave homeowners paying for more fire insurance if their rating is downgraded. Also, the New Haven Register in March had noted Governor Malloy's proposed cuts leaving firefighters in lurch, affecting the state's 9 fire training schools. Just something to consider. Our fire department has the best of reputations, and I had to call on them in my 28 years in Guilford. I did call on them once for a flooding issue. Great response, very proud of them. But if there's issues and it's difficult, would we prohibit ourselves from recruiting more volunteers if now we're bulk storaging more propane? Is that something that someone would want to stay away from and not come to our town to serve? I also wanted to say, and lastly, on our own economic development page, and again, in response to my concern of removing bulk storage from the CD zone, our town webpage, which I alluded to last public hearing about tourism and our western gateway to the town of Guilford along Route 1, where the CD zone is, allowing the bulk propane bulk storage of propane. Our town website cites to current developers or to bring in new business that we have a vibrant, active business core along the Boston Post Road, Route 1. And I would like to see that, and I think the bulk storage of propane would definitely deter from that in the CD zone. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate so much you allowing me to speak. I know I've gone way over. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, we need that mic. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman, if it's in order, maybe we could move the NEC 3 public hearing so that people can go home. So we can move to the regular hearing, deliberation of item 2 up in the agenda.
Do we want to close the public hearing on this propane issue?
Move to close.
Anyone want to second that? All those in favor of closing the public hearing on this propane issue? Okay, that carries. Thank you. Can I get a motion to open the public hearing on the WC3 issue?
So moved.
You have a second?
That's what we're doing, not deliberating.
Well, you wanted to move this, you just said.
I'll move the deliberation of item 2, deliberation of the public hearing item to now, so these people can go home instead of waiting through our...
Okay, you know what, let's do that, so that we can, we're going to deviate a little bit from our normal thing. We're going to actually, we've closed the public hearing on the propane issue. I'd like to entertain the first of the 3 motions on this issue for consideration. This is the first one, would be the Montana property. Do we have a motion for that? So we can discuss it?
George, do we have a motion for...
We have 2 motions. One's a motion to approve, and one's a motion to deny, and you fill in the blanks. Fill in the blanks of what you're actually voting on.
Just have a little procedural thing we got to straighten out.
Motion to approve, and this is the motion to deny that we have in our packets.
Right. So the chairman's suggestion is that you separate the proposed text that we created into 3 parts. First part dealing with the definition.
No, first part's going to be the property on Boston Post Road.
Okay, so that'd be the last part of the actual text of the document that you have before you, which is the...
I don't have any documents before me.
Yeah, that document's not before us.
The actual text of the proposed amendment, that was, you had that at your last meeting?
We had it at our last meeting. We do not have it right now.
Yeah, it's not in the folders.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see if we can get a copy of it here in front of us then.
I have one.
We have the file here. We should know it by heart,
I
actually.
understand if my husband didn't come down and ask about the new zoning district, you wouldn't have that either.
Let me have one of those. No, we have that. Let me have one of them. So you're talking about first voting on the
Well, it's a motion, George, I think, to remove the permitted use of propane on what's in the CD zone.
okay, so that's
the first motion.
delete from 273-21C, the following.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So the motion is to...
Sure. Well, someone has to make the motion, actually.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I be recognized to make the first motion?
Walter, please make the first motion. There you go.
This is 273-2, the first part.
273.C. It's going to be delete this one.
Voted, amend the zoning code as follows. Delete from 273-21C the following, quote, in addition, the bulk storage and retail sale of propane on parcels of land containing less than 4 acres in an area and located west of Westlake Avenue and south of US Route 1 in the CD zone is permitted by special permit.
Wait a second.
This deletion is...
What is it? I thought we just deleted it.
Make a you're going to include a finding in your motion?
This deletion is in conformance with the zoning code and plan of conservation and development.
Okay.
So
effective date?
Effective.
It's effective upon filing with the town clerk.
No, you don't. Give us a date.
This amendment is approved based upon finding that it conforms with the plan of conservation and development. The amendment is effective on June 12, 2015.
Okay. Do we have a second?
No second.
Thank you. We have a second. All right, so let's discuss this. Okay, so, you know, we have heard years worth of testimony, literally years. And what has happened on this particular property is we had an applicant who came before us and applied for a approval, didn't get his approval, but got by special permit, and it's been an uphill battle ever since. However, this applicant has since no longer has an interest in this property. He has applied for a facility in another town. He does not own this property. He does not have an interest in this property. Unfortunately, the town of Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission is under a lawsuit to defend itself for this decision, and we're the only ones who have any interest in this. The applicant has walked away. So this kind of is like a real no-brainer. We're holding the bag, and I'd like to drop the bag. Who else has a comment on this? Anyone? Do I get to do this, finally?
You're on your phone.
I'm going to call the question. All those in favor of deleting this passage from the property on Boston Post Road?
Point of order, I'd like a roll call.
A roll call, okay, we can do that. Frank, what's your thoughts? Yes. Good, thank you. I would vote yes to end this. Walter?
Yes, aye.
I just get to sit and watch.
You get to sit and watch. Ray?
Since I was against it in the first place, I'll vote yes on this one.
Thank you.
Yes.
Tom?
Yes.
Richard? All right, so this is... Oh, thank you. All right, all those in favor? This motion passes. Thank you, God. Okay. The second one, which is the definition.
I also make this motion.
Please, Walter, make this definition motion. Take it.
Voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve an amendment to the zoning code as follows. Amend Table 5 by adding the following. Is that correct?
Yep.
No, didn't you say you wanted to do the definition first?
Yeah.
We're going to do the propane bulk facility first?
I'd like to do the definition first, if you could.
Voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve an amendment to the zoning code as follows. Section 273-96, propane bulk facility.
No. You're amending 273-2, word usage, to add the following?
Or we're going to the top.
Right?
Yep. Starting over. Voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve an amendment to the zoning code as follows. Amend 273-2, word usage, to add the following, quote, propane bulk facility, dash, any facility where the primary function is to store LP-gas prior to further distribution, where LP-gas is received by cargo tank, comma, motor vehicle, comma, railroad tank car, comma, or pipeline, comma, and distributed by portable container, parenthesis, package, end parenthesis, delivery, comma, by cargo tank, motor vehicle, comma, or through gas piping, period, end quote. This amendment is approved based upon a finding that it conforms with the Plan of Conservation and Development. The amendment is effective on June 12, 2015. And I'd like to put that in the form of a motion.
Okay, do we have a second? Second. Thank you, Frank. All right, let's have some discussion on this. This is a motion where we're defining the difference between a tank buried underground somewhere that heats a school or a large building versus a distribution facility, a propane bulk facility. And there are significant differences. You know, as one of the people who testified tonight rightly said, the problem with flying is the landing and takeoff. You know, flying up in the air is not really that dangerous. And same thing with propane, the filling and the emptying and filling trucks and all that bears a lot more danger than just storing it. Do any of you have a comment on this?
Is this definition, I'm just asking the question because this is the first time I've seen the document from Victor Anatra. Is this definition doing what Victor is talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, anything else, gentlemen? All right, call the question. All those in favor of this word change to define propane bulk facility? All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries. All right.
Call abstentions.
Any abstentions or vote no's? Victor, congratulations. All right, last but not least. You want to make this motion, Walter?
Sure.
This is 273-96.
Yep. All yours, bud.
Voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve an amendment to the zoning code as follows. Section 273-96, propane.
Excuse me, well, you should start with the amend table 5 language.
You're right. Amend table 5 by adding the following. Line 24B, propane bulk facility, SP in I1 and I2 zones, and, quote, see also section 273-96, end quote. Add to Article 12, regulation for special districts, the following. Quote, section 273-96, propane bulk facility, except in accordance with this section and Article 10, no propane bulk facility shall be created or established. Purpose: the storage and distribution of propane has the potential to be hazardous and to have an adverse impact on residential areas. For this reason, the establishment of such uses are allowed only by special permit. Such facilities shall meet the following additional standards. Tanks over 1,000 gallons must be buried or mounted in accordance with best engineering practices. No such facility shall be established on a lot less than 4 acres in size. All tanks must be set back a minimum of 100 feet from any property line, and any point of transfer of propane from a tank to a vehicle must be at least 150 feet from any property line, and in all instances, tanks shall be located 1,500 feet from any residential property as measured from the nearest point on the tank to any lot line for a property on which there exists or is permitted a residential use. Number 4, no such facility shall be established except where a traffic study has been performed demonstrating that the transport of gas to and from the facility will be unlikely to create an undue hazard and that the adjacent roads are adequate to accommodate said traffic. Number 5, no such facility shall contain more than 30,000 gallons of total and/or that is, cumulative bulk storage on any one parcel. Number 6, no such facility shall be located within an AE or VE zone as defined by FEMA flood insurance rate maps. That's FEMA firm maps. Number 7, all tanks and vehicle parking areas shall be screened from adjacent property. Number 8, a bulk storage of propane facility containing greater than 5,000 gallons shall be equipped with a blast and fire protection earthen berm or other similar structure, the dimensions of which are 125% of the height and 125% the length of the fuel storage tank on any side facing a property within 1,500 feet on which a residential or commercial use is permitted or on which the bulk storage of propane of over 5,000 gallons exists. Said structure shall be designed in accordance with the fire safety analysis to prevent accumulation of gas or other hazard. Number 9, retail facilities for the bulk storage of propane shall meet all requirements of the NFPA 58 for commercial and wholesale storage, comma, whichever is the most strict. Number 10, all activities associated with such a facility shall conform with 273-45B of this code. I'd like to put that in the form of a motion.
Before we do that, sir, point of order. The documents that we have don't have
9 and 10.
Don't have
We
what
have
he
those
has.
as submitted. That's right, that was submitted tonight.
So we haven't had a chance to study it, and you want us to...
What were the last two?
Last two?
Yeah.
Well, just let me go back a second. Let me go back a second.
Yep.
Number 3 here says 150 feet. You said 1,500 feet.
I said both. So I've completed the motion. Wait, let me finish. This amendment is approved based upon a finding that it conforms with the Plan of Conservation and Development. The amendment is effective on June 12, 2015. In response to your question, if you review number 3 in bold, the attorney for Village Victoria recommended additional language for lines 3, 4, and 5 under number 3.
If we were to vote on that and accept it, are there any properties in town where you could meet that requirement?
I actually asked town council if we have to have a facility that meets a requirement. He said no. We do not have to have a
Well, no,
facility.
what I'm asking is there any property where you could put something that would meet the requirement? I'm not asking. There isn't any? You don't know?
I don't know.
On residential property, I believe there is. I believe it's actually the same properties that we've been looking at north of 95.
No, I'm just, I mean, if
Yeah, you know
there
where
isn't any.
the adult entertainment facilities are located, that would be 2,000. So yeah, that definitely would.
So there are properties where you could meet that requirement?
We don't currently have a second at this time.
What?
I haven't heard a second at this time.
All right, so, do we have a second?
I'll second it.
There you go. All right, so Tom.
Well, I just, they're asking that we don't have, basically deny propane in the town of Guilford altogether. We're still talking about a set of regulations here. These changes that we've gotten were presented tonight.
Yep.
And I don't feel comfortable voting on this without having had time to read this and read the stuff that Victor gave us. I'm not comfortable voting. I'm not against.
Oh, yeah, I guess he's got a mic.
So this is a little bit like voting on a $40 billion budget and not having information about the budget.
Or a healthcare package.
Or healthcare package.
That's true. However, these are self-explanatory. We're talking about 1,500 feet from residential. You know, it's not like we have to go deep into this. And I don't want to just spring on anybody, but we are here, and we have heard mountains and mountains of testimony. Literally, a chunk of my life listening to this. And, you know, we have had testimony from experts who talk to the danger associated with this and the engineering methods to try and insulate people so they can be safe from it. And, you know, at the end of the day, I consider my charge as a member of this commission to protect these people. They're depending on me, and I take it very, very seriously. Much more serious than amphibians. We have sat through night after night. You know, it's just gone on, and I can't find, you know, I can't find any information that says, gee, you know, this is really safe. We should do this. One of the other commissioners tried to seek out information from our fire chief in the last week and wasn't able to gather much information. He was trying to see where it could be considered safe. We didn't get that. We've listened to how it's not safe. We've listened to how it builds up in pockets and can be explosive. We've listened to all of this.
I guess you're missing my point. If the people don't want propane at all in Guilford, why are we going to have why are we even going to...
We can vote no. We can vote no, and then there's nowhere in Guilford it's going to go. If we vote no now...
There'll be no current regulations that would allow it.
There are no regulations that would allow it. If we vote no to this right now, if we raise our hands to support these people and their request of saying no, then nowhere in Guilford can you store more propane than we currently have. which is more than any other town in the state currently. So
Could someone make application for a facility?
good luck.
I'm just asking.
They can. Anyone can apply
So
for
we could be doing this all again.
Well, you're right, except...
we can always suffer through anything again.
Right, that's true. People can always ask.
As our prior conversation went, do we want to, as our prior conversation went before tonight's meeting, do we remand it back to committee to study it again?
We could, but we'd have to vote no on it now.
Yeah, I intend to vote against this. We are not always, this commission, as you know, is appointed, and we are not always as responsive to citizens or people, or most of all, residents of our town, as might be wise. A lot of the time, we do tend to make choices to please the one business in front of us. And residences, as you all know in this town, are by far the most protected use. Residents make up the vast majority of this bedroom community. And this commission regularly focuses on other things. We spend an inordinate amount of our time on the very small proportion of this town that is commercial. And commercial development has lots of value for this town under lots of circumstances, but we don't consider the negative effects of a lot of kinds of commercial development. We tend to allow any of it anywhere at any time, and we don't consider the real externalities, even the effects on other businesses, which is something that is actually before us here, because we would be significantly damaging a lot of other businesses with the placement over on Boston Post Road on the west end. Ultimately, this commission is appointed through a convoluted and opaque process, it's not easy to describe, but it moves through the political parties in complicated ways. It would be great if more people got involved in the town so that we could all suffer together. Got involved on these commissions specifically so that we could all suffer together, but we understand that you have lives, and
we don't.
And we don't. But ultimately, the most important, one of the greatest tools that we have at our disposal to protect residents and to protect the value of our quality of life is the special permit process. Special permit requirements provide the greatest protection for residents and also for existing businesses. And in this case, it really solved a problem that North Branford is very unlikely to be able to solve because they do not have a special permit requirement on their situation. There is no reason for us to do this tonight. These additional protections are very valid, and propane is an important resource, but there's no reason for us to expand this use at this time. And I made the motion so as to include the more restrictive language, but I don't intend to support the motion. Thank you.
Ray? Nothing?
That's
Tom? Something else?
It's on?
There you go.
I humbly disagree. I'm going to vote against this because it's clear right now that the people don't want this. But I think Mr. Corbier is doing a disservice to all the people that have been on this planning position that did work on Route 1 West, Route 1 East, Town Center South, coastal resilience, plans of conservation and development, and to say that, you know, that we're not, first of all, our job here is to enforce the regulations. That's our job. And to make new regulation, if people request us to make new regulation or change regulations, that's our job. And our job is to try to satisfy all the constituents in this town, residents and businesses. So I don't agree with his comments about how we're treating residents. It's not true, period.
Okay, thank you. Richard?
Yep. I'm going to...
There you go. There you go.
Sure, it's back now.
There you are.
I'm going to not support this motion. It's overwhelming here tonight.
Good, thank you. All right, so we're going to hold a vote in a minute. Just want to say one thing, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. You've all come here because this is something that touches an area right near your homes, but our town needs you for helping deciding what goes on in all parts of this town. There have been people on the West End who have been battling this for a year. I've been with them through it. I'm sure they're as exhausted as I am from it. And maybe this is the wake-up call that some of you need. I put slips of paper on there about joining commissions and getting involved with the town. And I ask you to please consider it. You know, we're not any different than you. You know, we joke that we don't have lives and we can sit here and do this week after week or every 2 weeks. But the truth is that this is an incredibly satisfying thing. We are really near the center of the community because of what we do. We're aware of what's going on in town. We've heard what people think. And for me, you know, it's a thrill to come here. It's actually a privilege. And to get to be the chairman is I can't even tell you what an honor it is. So I would ask you to consider public service. I would ask you to take this opportunity, take that slip of paper home with you, and think about this. You know, there's no reason that you're any different than us. There are plenty of commissions, there are plenty of openings, and your town needs you, your community needs you. I'll talk even louder. This isn't working. Sorry. Technology is great. I'll talk really loud. So anyway, there we go. Frank can fix anything.
No. Give me a try this.
There we go. There we go. Sorry. Maybe it's my voice that doesn't work. It might be my voice. Anyway. It works now. Thank you, sir. But I humbly ask you, a lot of the folks on the West End did get involved. They are becoming members of commissions. They have stood up for this town. They have accepted the privilege of public service. And I urge you to do the same thing. It is thrilling. It is wonderful. It is great. Every one of us loves what we do. We may look like we're beat to death, but we're not. We're thrilled. So, with that in mind, all those in favor of supporting this propane amendment to store in industrial and industrial 2, all those in favor raise your hand. There are nobody voting for that. All those opposed raise your hand. Congratulations. So the motion it's like a weight off my shoulders. Thank you. Any abstaining? No. Okay, great. So, can you please break that? Great. So by nature of what we just did, we removed the propane privilege over on the West End. We defined propane storage and distribution as distribution, and we have said no to propane storage in Guilford. So as far as I know, from my reading of this, we cannot store more propane in this town. Great, congratulations all of you. Okay, so right.
Public hearing on item 3.
So we're going to continue on our normal business. You're more than welcome to stay and watch what it is we do every week. Or you're free to leave if you want to. And we're going to have Josh
give you a guess how it went.
Josh Hirschman is rejoining us. All right, can I get a motion to open the public hearing on, where are we? Item 3, create new zoning zoning district. Can I get a motion? Second over here. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, great. All right, so what do we know about this? Oh, we want to wait a minute for the clerk.
Remind him to talk out in the hall so we can finish this.
So guys, if you're gonna leave, and that would be great if you do that. If you want to stay, again, you're welcome to stay. We got a lot of exciting things to talk about tonight.
That was my experience with that. I was
trying to keep quiet.
Regulations.
All right, so mixed use conservation. George? Ah, we have some representation.
What do we got now?
We got a microphone.
Mr. Chairman, we take a break? 5-minute break?
Before we get started, just want to take a 5-minute break. 5-minute break. 5-minute break for everybody. And welcome back. We're going to start up the meeting again. We have not transacted any business nor had any discussions about any of the issues before us. We were just about to start hearing about our mixed-use conservation 3. We have a presenter who wants to give us a little information.
Good evening and congratulations. My name is Ron Nault. I'm an engineer with Luke's Consulting Engineers. Ken and Earl Horton are with us as owners of the subject project. Our request tonight is to create a new zoning district, mixed-use conservation 3, for the purpose of applying this to a specific site, namely 350 Goose Lane. We see 350 Goose Lane, currently zoned industrial, and the former Wilbur and King business as transitional between industrially zoned property to the south and the R5 residential to the north. The site is 15 acres and has been previously approved for 2 large office buildings. We envision a residential setting of detached or attached units around the gardens and lake in a pleasant village cottage development style. A schematic of that is shown generally on the presentation board before you. Goose Lane running north to south, the existing structure, the former Wilbur King office here in the center to be retained. The pond that shares the property to the south, and a streetscape of housing units to be centered around the gardens that exist behind the former Wilbur King property, and also featuring the lake. That's not specifically why we're here tonight, but we took the existing mixed-use OS zoning and basically deleted the H55 restriction, anticipating mostly empty nesters, but also with the moderate-priced housing expecting small families. We believe this will be good for the neighborhood, not ever having to worry about some future industrial use. And I wrote that before I sat through the proceedings tonight. And be accomplished in phases, totaling about 48 units, resulting in a density of less than 4 per acre. We maintain the design standards of the adjacent residential zone, actually increasing the street setback to fit the neighborhood. If approved in creating the new zoning, we will be back before you soon to request the change in zoning specifically to this property. Thank you.
You guys have any questions, or?
We got to continue, right?
What's the?
Sorry.
Can we move to the smaller room? No,
I think this is good.
I'm just trying to figure out, in terms of density, as you know, that's just on the other side from warehouses and the highway. What kind of density are we looking here in terms of units per acre or in terms of other items per acre?
This plan, though conceptual, would be less than 4 units per acre. The zoning density that we adopted from the MUOS carries a 6 unit per acre density. This plan would actually be less than that. But
you wouldn't have any objection to, say, a 4 units per acre density adjustment to the MUC3 zone as drafted?
I would say no. The site's probably more limited by its septic system capacity, but
it would seem, yeah. Sometimes the 6 units per acre limitations that we've tended to have on a lot of things have had some strange results, and since most developers do tend to end up at this sort of 2, 3, 4 level. I was hoping to get away from the 6 that we have in, for instance, the TS2 zones and some other places.
No, I would say that we would agree to that. As I said, the 6 that we used in our template that we started with was
from the MUOS.
Previous, yes.
So if it were 4, it would not impede this kind of development that we're looking at here?
No.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Last chance. Anything else you want to add?
See you in 2 weeks.
There you go. All right. We'll continue this to the second hearing? Yes. Yeah, it'll be the second hearing in the next meeting. That'll be the enjoyable meeting with the plan of conservation and development stuff. You'll love it. All right, can I get a motion to table this until...
Oh, wait, doesn't the public have to speak?
Oh, yes. Would the public like to ask any questions? Come on. There we go. Got a question.
Question. Karen Flatley, 21 Village, Victoria. Somebody's got my list over there, but you see when I got this, I started making all kinds of little notes because some of the things raised flags. I love the idea of having a residential community over there. We probably would be delighted with something like that. But this thing is loaded with multi-family units, assisted living, nursing homes, recreational facilities, retail stores, restaurants, personal service establishments. I'd like to hear more about that. Research laboratories, hospitals, urgent medical care facilities, places of worship, which we just defeated one place of worship, and recreational facilities. I think a few years ago there was a Y that wanted to build up the road. I think this needs to be refined a bit.
Thank you. You own that property?
Yes, sorry.
Sir.
I would just like to say that as a resident of Village Victoria, and we know their work here in Guilford, that they're responsible builders and they're responsible people, and I don't think their intent is to do any harm or put any massage parlors there. So I think we can take them at their word that they're going to build condos and would be happy to see.
Can you state your name, please, sir?
Sir, could we just have your name?
Oh, Mark Cumsey, K-U-M-Z-A.
Great, thank you.
Is it possible to see any projects that are maybe around here that you've done?
You might recall the 66 High Street project's under construction now.
That's yours?
Yes. The Hortons have been involved in renovation of mill properties in New Haven and the surrounding area as well. As a civil engineer, I've designed a number of projects, but on this project we're working with Russ Campaign and are attracted to the cottage-style development that's become popular for downsizing of homes to more modest scale, but still built nicely.
You're up.
Donnie Crescenzo, 199. I have a question regarding the density and I guess I want to know why it needs to be so dense, and what is the tax implications there on the town compared to this being an industrial property? Because it seems like we're getting back into more needs for the elderly and more schooling, and you said it would be more slanted towards a retirement, but not necessarily so.
Correct.
But we all know that as long as it's residential, it raises our tax need rather than bringing in income. So I have questions about that, but I'd like to have answered by,
So your question is, if it's residential and there are children going to school, how much will it hurt the school district to have to educate these kids versus the taxes that it's going to pay?
Right.
Yeah.
And the same with if it's not children. I mean, I don't know what the implications are to have more elderly housing versus
well, the elderly housing, there would be very few children probably, although, nowadays you don't know.
So is education the only thing that raises our taxes when dealing with residences?
More police?
Yeah, it would need more police, more firefighters. Not like a propane place would be, but certainly a lot less than that.
School is one of the overwhelming costs.
So I'm just saying in terms of it being so dense, does it have to be that dense if we're bringing in another residential area?
Well, what gets down to, unfortunately, is that at what density does it become financially viable for a developer to build it? If we limited them to 3 units per acre, they wouldn't make any money. They wouldn't build it. So we have to induce them. Okay.
Well, I guess what about places like Popper Hill and Long Hill Farm? Are they that dense?
I don't know.
Yes.
They're dense.
Are they denser?
Denser, I think, actually, probably.
I think.
Yeah.
I don't know about Long Hill Farms, but I do know Copper Hill.
Copper Hill appears to be a lot denser.
Yes.
So, and at the end of the day, do we say, okay, we're only going to allow a certain type of development and that has this amount of density, this amount of cost? Is that one of the considerations that we should have?
Around town, you certainly, it would be possible for someone to do a pretty refined analysis around town of the tipping point specifically for Guilford. Other communities have done that.
So how do we get that done?
Well, economic impact is an important factor that I think we haven't always directly considered, but sometimes we have.
So economic impact is probably an important thing for any real long-term planning if we're going to look at it that way. I'm sorry. Okay, so we'll find out more answers about that for you, and we'll try to have better information.
Yeah, I really don't think Copper Hill is that dense. I lived there for a long time, and I really would beg to differ on that.
Maybe we can find out. George, is there a way of finding out for the next meeting?
Absolutely.
So we're going to have an answer in the next meeting. We'll figure it out. Is that okay?
That'd be great.
Thank you. Victor?
Mixed use conservation 3, is there a table that gets connected to this, what's allowed and what's not allowed? Or is that just open-ended right now?
I don't know.
My second question is, I can't really see the details of that proposed map, but what's the percentage of residential versus commercial? What type of commercials? Are these condominiums for sale? Are they apartments for rent? Are there retail stores? What's table 5 on the uses? This is so general, I don't know.
Do you have the text of the proposed amendment? Yeah, no. There is a text here of proposed mixed-use conservation 3 zone, which lists specifically the uses that are allowed, which would then, if it were approved, it would be translated into Table 5. I'm sorry. The uses were dwelling units, recreation facility. Do you have a copy of this? Okay. It spells out exactly what uses would be allowed in this zone.
Well, I'm just curious, because this is the first of 2 public meetings, and shouldn't this be an important part of what the public wants to comment on?
Absolutely. This is absolutely what the public should comment on is this proposed text, which is what's being considered right now, creating this new zone district. Not rezoning this property to this zone district. That would be a second step if this district is created.
Is in that site proposal, any of these things included in your site proposal?
We brought along a conceptual plan
as George stated, we're here tonight just to create the new zoning anywhere in town. The next step, if approved, would be to ask that this property be rezoned from industrial to this new zone.
Could this new zone be dropped anywhere?
Yeah, just like any zone can be dropped. I don't know, dropped is the word I would use, but any zone can be, any property can be rezoned something else if that zone exists. This zone doesn't exist in our regulations today. So this proposal is to create this new zone with the idea eventually of petitioning to rezone this property to that use, to that zone. So yes.
What's the zone in industrial?
It's industrial.
Yes. Gentleman in the back.
Thank you. I think this is a project looking for a zone so that it can happen. I was at the planning meeting where this was proposed to use this mixed use. We have some other mixed use that it was copying off of. I'd really like us to eliminate a lot of the unneeded stuff, which I agree with you, Karen, is the kind of the concern, what else can go in there as well. I think that'll ease some of the concerns. With regards to density, the question is how does it compare to Village Victoria density-wise? Do you have that? And I have one more question. Yes?
28 units on 25 acres.
Okay, so you're about one something. And then finally, I think with respect to the schooling, first I'd like to see more families, young families moving to Connecticut and Guilford. I don't know if you all know, but the population is declining, the school population, the number of students is declining. We have a whole bunch of schools to deal with. So I think, you know, you might end up balancing out at best.
Can you state your name, please?
Shadi Lozale, 377 Goose Lane.
Sir. Tony Cafiro, 462 Granite Road. We sat in meetings not all that long ago where procedurally this committee sent requests for zoning changes specific to the propane matter back to the planning committee for advice. And in this case, I don't believe that the proposal for a new zone has been made through those proper channels that this commission apparently adheres to or wishes to adhere to. So for consistency purposes, I would urge you to remand this back to committee for study.
This proposal was discussed by the planning committee.
Was it voted on?
Was it voted on?
Don't recall if it was voted on.
A couple of months ago, we turned the propane back because it wasn't voted on.
Correct.
Well, that is a little bit different because the propane proposal was actually a proposal of the planning committee to this commission. In this case, the applicant came to the planning committee seeking feedback from them as to what they thought the suitability of this concept was. So still, this proposed creating this new zone is a proposal of Ron Nald and his partners. It's not a proposal of the planning committee.
How did the planning committee vote on that?
They didn't have to. This is an application that this individual has submitted to the commission, so it doesn't come in through the planning committee. It's not the planning and zoning commission that's initiated it. So those kinds of applications come to the full commission to be voted upon. It's rare that they get referred out.
You were before the planning committee, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was the feedback you got from them?
I dare say kind of unanimous positive referral. Of course, propane was...
Have the right to come either, a lot of times they'll go to the zoning subcommittee or go to the planning subcommittee in a more informal setting and say, you know, what do you think? Is this something that you might consider? And the planning or the zoning subcommittee will give advice that's non-binding until it comes to the full commission. And they chose to go that route.
Does that answer your question?
Well, it kind of does, but if that's the situation, then I would offer this feedback. Considering that Guilford spends north of $14,000 per student currently in high schools, or in the school system, I should say, K through 12, it would seem obvious that a moderately priced condominium at whatever moderately means, $350,000, $400,000, would be hard-pressed to raise enough revenue for one, if not two children. And I would urge this commission to consider the application as age-restricted for that reason.
Okay, thank you.
My understanding, though, is that when you make an amendment like this, that if this company decides it's not financially feasible to do this, it could become any of these uses, which is what happened when we were talking about the Bonanno property and its zone change several years ago. So, you know, I think we have to consider the zone change for itself, and, you know, not just looking at this and not saying, well, if it's only 5 units, it's okay, or if it's this, because we have no idea that it will be that.
Right, it could be any of these things, so you're right. You know, it could be whatever it says in there, retail establishments or, you know.
Let me clarify a couple of things. Somebody mentioned retail stores and restaurants. These are only permitted uses under very limited circumstances as described here, and also as applied in the other mixed-use zones. Retail stores are only allowed when they're accessory to a permitted use and located in the same building as the permitted use, not to exceed 10% of the floor area of the primary permitted use. Similarly, restaurants, when accessory to a permitted use, located in the same building as a permitted use, not to exceed 10% of the floor area. So it's not as if retail stores and restaurants are permitted uses in this zone. I think that's similar language that's used in the other mixed-use conservation zones. It's true that once this zoning amendment is applied to a specific piece of property, then whatever uses are allowed under whatever circumstances could be proposed and or developed in the future. That's absolutely true. The other thing you need to consider is the uses that are allowed in the current zone, specifically in this property, if that's what you're worried about. So it would be appropriate to compare the uses permitted in this new zone, if you're thinking about this property, to the uses that are permitted in the existing zone.
And in an industrial zone, what are some of the uses that are permitted? Just so people.
Well, industrial uses, whatever that might mean, manufacturing, light manufacturing, warehouses, facilities of that kind. Residential uses are not permitted in industrial zones, which is, of course, what's driving this particular discussion tonight. Offices, as you heard, are permitted uses in industrial zones. And in fact, as some of you know who were here, there was an office development already approved for this particular property.
Yeah,
the Goose Lane property.
Are like the personal service establishments, clinics,
personal service establishments,
are those all permitted currently?
Clinics, medical, and dental, I think are allowed in industrial. I have to double check that. Personal service, no, I don't think that's allowed in industrial. Research laboratories, I believe, are. Retail, no. Retail and restaurants are not permitted in industrial. I'm not sure about nursing facilities. I don't know if they're allowed in industrial or not. I have to check. Places of worship by special permit are allowed in every zone, residential and otherwise.
I'll make a motion to continue this to the June 17th meeting.
Second.
Is that a good meeting? I know we have a lot of stuff.
Would that be considered the second public hearing?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you want to be here for that one? Like, do you want us to push it one more meeting, or?
No, the next available meeting would be fine.
So we have that June 17th, is it? We have a second. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. All right, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And I get a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Okay, site plan. Russell, we're going to table this one. Design review.
We don't even need to table it, it's already done.
What do you mean?
Move to table number 1.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It's terrible. Okay, number 2, the same thing.
Move to table number 2.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. And number 3, same thing.
Move to table number 3.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Thank you, Frank. Okay, special permits. Let's receive and set a public hearing date for Tom and Rochelle Kowalski.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
The state public hearing date was July 1st.
Okay.
Yeah, July 1st or? Yeah.
July 1.
Okay. Coastal Area Management Site Plan, Town of Guilford, same thing. Set a hearing date for July the 1st.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay, we're moving good. We're down to nobody. I looked away for a second. Everybody leaves.
Did you people vote on everything?
It's site plan.
They're going right through it.
So, subdivision, Sunset Creek Development, receive and take action.
Excuse me, we can't hear what you're doing.
We got to use the end.
I'm sorry, is that better?
Yes.
Okay, great. So, Sunset Creek Development, receive and take action.
Well, let's just go back and clarify. You tabled Vito,
We tabled all of them.
you tabled Women and Family Life.
Yep.
Page Hardware has been withdrawn.
No.
And then you said that you received the special permit Coast Area site plans?
Yes.
Set those public hearing dates? Okay.
For July 1.
July 1.
Right.
Okay, Sunset Creek, receive and take action, Mike Harkin.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Michael Harkin. I'm a professional engineer and principal of Harkin Engineering, located at 78 Wolf Hollow Lane in the town of Killenworth, Connecticut. Again, I'm here tonight on behalf of my client, Sunset Creek Development, for their project Sunset Meadow. First, excuse the appearance. I ran off the baseball field that I was coaching. I thought that I would have to be here a lot earlier.
Surprise.
Exactly. So, traded suit and tie for baseball clothes. But, you may remember this project last year. It was approved. It was a 5-lot residential subdivision off Stepstone Hill Road, Nut Plains Road, in the town of Guilford, Connecticut. It was a 5-lot subdivision with 3 of the lots being officially off the Nut Plains Road. During our subdivision design, on the plans itself, we had shown a water main that was coming off Stepstone Hill Road. There is municipal water service, Connecticut Water, in Stepstone Hill. We were told the requirement from the water company was that we would have to put the water main in Nut Plains Road to service approximately at least half of the lots on that subdivision. That is not the case. So we're here tonight for a site plan modification to not put in that water line, water service in Nut Plains Road. Just to let you know, there is a hydrant located at the intersection of Stepstone Hill Road and Nut Plains Road. So we will be putting in an 8 to 12 inch main to nowhere virtually. So the feasible improvement alternative that we have reviewed with town staff was to do away with that main in Nut Plains Road and put 2 private wells, one on lot 4 and one on lot 5. Those private wells have been reviewed with Dennis Johnson of the health department, the actual health director. I believe there's a letter in the file stating his stance on it. So that's why we're here tonight. We will be speaking favorably for this modification.
I'll read the letter actually in. This is to the Planning and Zoning Commission from Dennis Johnson, dated today. Subject to Sunset Meadow Subdivision 353, Stepstone Hill Road, map 92, lot 15. The applicant's proposal to eliminate the requirement of a connection to a public water supply is permitted under section 19-13-B51M of the Connecticut Public Health Code. This regulation allows the issuance of private well permits to dwellings on lots whose property boundaries lines are greater than 200 feet away along a street from an approved public water supply. With the subdivision of the applicant's parcel, the property lines for lots 4 and 5 were eventually established to be more than 200 feet away from the Connecticut Water Supplies Company's water main on Stepstone Hill Road. Therefore, the extension public water to these lots is not required. Adequate area exists on the applicant's proposal lot for construction of private wells.
Thanks.
That's it.
George, we spoke earlier about some sort of state that does not apply here.
That's what Dennis is referring to, the
Okay,
public
so
health.
just want to be sure that's what it talks to.
Yes.
What else do we need to know? Anything?
Can you talk briefly about the benefit of having a well versus city-served water? Or vice versa?
Yeah. Well, two things. There is no real trade-off on these two lots for the difference between the domestic waters supplied by the municipal service as opposed to the water that you would find on your physical lots. The cost is more so the installation cost on the developer. Looking at the feasible improvement alternative, a well in this area to drill, $5,000, $6,000. To install that water main to nowhere is around $100,000. So there's a huge, huge financial difference for the developer to install the wells. Okay. I could see if there was a hydrant or something attached to them where there was some fire suppression, but there's a hydrant right at the intersection. So really that main is a main that goes to nowhere.
I have discussed this with the Assistant Fire Chief, Wayne Vitry, who has no objection to this change in the plan.
Cool. Anything else, gentlemen? Frank? You good?
I'll make a motion.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Proposed motion. Voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve a subdivision plan revision for Sunset Creek Development, Sunset Meadow subdivision to remove the proposed water main shown in Nut Plains Road and replace with individual wells for water supply on lots 4 and 5. This motion is approved based on the finding that it conforms with the zoning code and subdivision code.
Second. We have a second. Any other discussion? All those, what? Not that mic.
Yeah, well, there's the standard of review here is not very high, and also the safety concerns have been addressed.
Right.
That's the main thing.
No issue.
No issue.
All right, all those in favor? All right, congratulations, Mike. Good job.
Thank you very much.
Any opposed, any abstentions? None? Great. A letter from the Regional Water Authority regarding conservation easement to the state. This just came up, Tom.
Yeah, I asked the question about the open space at
Yeah.
TFCB, and then, but it's not like they're selling the land, they're giving some kind of easement to the state. For what reason, I don't know.
Do you want the letter read into the record?
Yeah, would you?
Yeah, okay. Dear Mrs. Reed, in accordance with the provisions of Special Act 7798 as amended, the Representative Policy Board of the South Central Connecticut Regional Water District is considering an application submitted to it by the South Central Connecticut Regional Water Authority for the transfer of interest in real property conservation easement to the state of Connecticut over 60 plus minus acres located off Great Hill Road in Guilford, Connecticut, which is currently referred to as Land Unit GU 12A. The subject land comprises 60.81 acres. The subject land is mostly Class 1 and Class 2 land that drains to Lake Menawatuck. A very small portion of the property, less than 2 acres, is Class 3. It is located off Great Hill Road in Guilford and was purchased from the Danio family in June 2014. The property does not appear in its land use plan. The authority applied for and received an open space grant from the state of Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. As a condition for receiving the grant money, the authority must grant a conservation easement in favor of the state of Connecticut. The value of the grant is $396,500. The proposed action will allow the authority to receive these funds. A public hearing has been scheduled for this application on Thursday, August 20th, 2015 at 7 p.m. at the Nathaniel B. Green Community Center, Guilford, Whitfield Room 32, Church Street, Guilford, Connecticut 06437. Comments may be received in writing in advance of the public hearing and should be sent to Chairperson, Representative, Policy Board, South Central Connecticut Regional Water District 90, Sergeant Drive, New Haven, Connecticut 06511. Comments submitted via fax mail should be sent to 203-562-0808. Comments submitted electronically should be sent to jslubowski@rwater.com. Very truly yours, Thomas P. Clifford III, Chairperson.
Thank you. So
There's no action required. This isn't for your interest if you want to
We didn't need to
comment.
read it into the...
What's that?
George, what does this mean? The value of the grant is $396,000.
What happened was this property was owned by the D'Andio family. They were contemplating developing it into subdivision lots. The Water Authority felt that it was desirable and in their interest to protect this property because it drains right into the Monongahatuck Reservoir. The Water Authority bought the land from D'Andio for, I don't know how much, probably somewhere around $396,500. And then they applied for a grant to the state to fund them for this property purchase. The state agreed that they would give them this money in exchange for this conservation easement. The conservation easement means that the water company cannot develop the land or sell it for development.
So the state's giving the money for this open land, is that coming out of our new budget for the state of Connecticut? Yeah.
That I have no idea where it comes from.
All right, so do we have to do anything, or?
No, this is an opportunity for you to comment on this.
Or send fax mails or emails.
Or whatever.
Right. We could fax them. Anything? You got anything to comment on?
I got some fax just the other day.
And you have, it sounds like, until August to
Tom, do you have a
contemplate
comment?
that.
No? Ray, any comments?
It's an FYI, it's a fait accompli, so.
Yeah, it's nothing.
Mr. Cost asked a question related to this at the POCD hearing the other night about water company land and whether or not it was permanently protected. And much of it is not permanently protected, as was someone explained at the meeting. However, this particular piece of land would be permanently protected by virtue of this easement that the state is requiring.
Unless the state starts selling stuff off.
I don't know what the, I don't know.
Well, I don't think the state would own it. They're just getting an easement that this water company will still own it.
Yes.
And for exchange of the easement, they're going to get paid back for the money there. Pretty good business deal.
I'd like to do that,
Speaking of businesses.
That's a good deal.
Let's all get land and get the state to pay for it. All right, so great. This is wonderful. I don't know that we have any comments. I'd like to move the meeting along to the discussion of the Route 1 West report. And I know we have some folks here to talk about it, so want to come up and tell us about anything, or no? Good. Need a microphone? It's kind of quiet in here now. Yeah, you don't need
my name is Chris Whitmer, and I am the chair of the Route 1 West Planning Committee, subcommittee of this commission. Last fall, we were sort of reformed with the purpose to study the area of Route 1 from Joan Drive to the Branford line. We spent some time meeting with people. We had a visioning charrette in this very room last fall, invited some neighbors, invited people from the community to that. We had attendance of around 50 people at that particular event, and the idea was to get people's input and ideas on what they would like to see for their area. The committee itself is comprised of residents, neighbors, businesses, people that have sort of an active interest in what happens in that stretch of Route 1. So as we looked at the area, it was apparent to us that there were three sort of distinctive zones along that 2-mile stretch. To make our lives a little easier and to make the job simpler for planning purposes, we divided it into 3 separate sort of review areas. And those were areas that we presented and discussed at the visioning charrette. With that information, we sort of reconvened discussed various uses, various thoughts and ideas, and prepared this report, which is really, these are just general recommendations. They're nothing, I think that, nothing that's, earth-shattering or dramatic in any way. But I do think that what we were hoping to do is sort of lay a foundation for future study and future, I guess what we are asking the commission for is the permission to allow the committee to continue on and study and do more specific zoning recommendations beyond this report. So.
Good. And so the original charge that we gave you was to do that, but as a courtesy, you're coming back and saying, this is what we've done so far, how do you like it, and we want to move forward and do this. And I think it's great. I've looked at it a number of times and I showed it to people in my personal life, and they're all impressed. And I personally would like you to continue. I don't know if the other folks on the board here have any input at all. Do you guys?
Well, is there anyone else in the public that would like to comment on this, or not sure?
Down to very few public now.
You want to say anything, Sam?
Victor wants to jump right in. What do you got?
I have a comment as part of the committee that I think the committee has put together is pushing almost 2 years now, and we really haven't come up with anything except some very general recommendations based on the consensus of the public that dwell in the West End area. My consensus is that I agree that we should get into more nuts and bolts of making some hard recommendations. But I think the composition of the committee, it's going to be impossible to do that. It's like, I don't know, the best way that I can illustrate it is that if you needed heart surgery, we bring in one heart specialist, 3 janitors, and maybe a nurse to try to figure it out. I think we need more expertise in our committee. And most of the committee is made up of homeowners, and the consensus of most of the homeowners is really anti-development altogether. They really don't want to see anything occur on the West End. So my personal recommendation is that, yes, I agree, we should take the next step, but I think we need a revamping of the committee with more expertise to figure out the nuts and bolts to make a hard, realistic recommendations to the board.
Thank you. I have reviewed that proposed plan a couple times, and I disagree with you that they don't recommend development. They do. And it may not be to the scale that the original committee group wanted. I know that they wanted to develop an awful lot. And it would have been lost on, the entire West End would have been lost to the same rows of stores after stores after stores if the original group had their way.
I was part of the original group, and that wasn't.
I didn't interrupt you. I waited, please. So as much as I wanted to. So the 2-year thing also, we lost a year putzing around with arguing and fighting, and the other people involved could not get momentum going. But as soon as Chris got involved, everything started to come together and it gelled. And read the report. It's really outstanding. It's wonderful. It talks to development in the areas where they feel it's appropriate. It talks to conservation where they feel it's appropriate. I've looked at the pictures, I've looked at the plans, and frankly, as I said in the last meeting, I'm humbled. I don't know how they did this, but it looks beautiful.
And Chris, you are the heart surgeon.
Yeah, you're the heart surgeon.
Hardly, but yes.
But also, to their credit, these folks are the ones who came up with this. They're most intimately familiar with the plan. They're intimately familiar with how to get there from here. And so I can't imagine not asking them to continue on. And if we need to make some adjustments to the group, I can appoint people and relieve people of being in the group. They do serve at my discretion. And I would entertain any suggestions that you have. Absolutely listen to everything you say, as I always have. So thank you for that comment. You folks want to comment at all?
Sandra Kingstown Drive. I have attended many of the Route 1 West Study Committee meetings, and I am a resident, and I appreciate Mr. Natra. I love his input, but as a resident, I do have convenience in mind. I don't mind development. I understand the economics of it. I'm an accountant. I've worked at many businesses, and I've served as an auditor. So I understand the business aspects, and development is fine. We had at one end something that was not desirable, but in the community, I think there's room for many discussions. So I don't think the committee is that close-minded. I think we're accepting. It's just we have to listen and hear what is proposed, whether it's affordable housing, diversity housing, if it's some other type of economic development. It's fine. I think we do still, I mentioned Guilford's identity. We do have this great character, this great cachet, and yes, we don't want to lose that. I think that's a strong point for us. But within reason, I think everything could be accomplished along that stretch. It has great pieces to it. It has great tradition. It has Ghazi's Turkey Farm. It has Strawberry Hollow, which people enjoy. There's that comfort. Elsa Green once mentioned in one of the meetings when she comes home from New Haven and drives down Route 1 and crosses into Guilford, she feels that cool air. She feels that environment engulfing her, and it is. It's very comforting. I've been driving that stretch for 28 years, and I grew up in North Branford, just down the road, and we used to go to Bradley's in Guilford with my parents. Very familiar with the stretch and the environment and the land. So yes, I do have some emotional attachment to it, but I think I am a bit astute enough to realize economic development is important and the proper uses and the proper places of such to be evaluated. So yes, I want what's best for Guilford. I do agree, and I think with research and study, that can be accomplished. So I think the group has done great work. I think the document is great. I appreciate the time. I am learning all the time, all of you, commissioners, committee members put in, and I think it's astounding. Shame on me. I hope my time will come, and I do agree the town is better for it. So thank you all, and I endorse the committee continuing forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Ed?
Ed Dinsey, part of the committee. You know full well how much I've gone back and forth between property owners' rights and the desire of the community, the neighbors. So I kind of take offense that it's just the neighbors, like we can't do it. Maybe I'm just a janitor, but damn it, I was cutting too. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Good. Okay. So, go ahead.
Can I ask, does this, we already have a Route 1 West, we already had a Route 1 West committee, right?
We did have a number of years ago.
And that created all the zones that we currently have there?
Well, they proposed the zones, yes.
Yes, so then they were approved.
Yeah.
So are we talking, does this committee study the same area that the original Route 1 West committee studied?
More or less. The original committee also included the Guilford Commons Rock Pile area, which this committee started to the west of that. So other than that, it's the same general area. It's the same.
I would just call everyone's attention to the fact that the Plan of Conservation and Development states that realistically Route 1 West is the last real area in town that there can be significant commercial development. In 2001, the commission did come up with a plan, which there was some significant development anticipated. Now, a lot of that didn't happen. And what the original purpose of this committee was is to take a look at that and understand why that development did not happen, the economic development that was anticipated. Now, some of it may have been the economy, some of it may have been who knows what, but to the extent the problems that prevented the development from occurring were related to the zoning or changes in the type of commercial development that was viable. That's what the committee was really charged with looking at. So as long as it continues in that direction and it abides by what the Plan of Conservation and Development says, which is that this is the last area of town that can have significant commercial development, then I'm fine with it. And if we need to change the membership of that to balance it more, then so be it.
Good. Perfect, thank you, Ray. And it was Ray who formed this group. He handed the reins over to me just at the time when he formed it, and it was one of the great moves of his chairmanship was to come up with this. So we have no changes. We would like you to continue what you're doing. Is that a general consensus here? Yes?
There's no really voting.
No, it's just, okay. So I don't hear any issues about it. I would recommend that you continue on. And
the tone and productivity has really been great across this past year.
Right, it has. And you know, I know that we all want results like today. We would love to have all the new code written and everything, but it takes time. You know, look at our propane thing. You know, we've been going at it for years. So you've done a great job. Your team has done a great job. And I personally would like you to continue. We will make some adjustments to the composition of the board. You and I can discuss that, what you feel is, you know, the best foot forward, and we'll move forward. And I'm sure that 10 years from now, people will look at Route 1 West and say, wow, this looks beautiful. And just to also make everybody aware, you know, we do put a lot of time in here, you know, and you know, some folks put even more time on. Chris has decided that if the folks on the east side of town, Goose Lane area, want to move forward with some sort of planning, he's going to give them a hand getting started. Very, very generous of you to do that.
You agreed to that?
He agreed to that. He actually agreed to it.
I thought he was joking.
Nice job. Good work. So, okay. Is that it? Is that the last thing? So yes, please move forward.
Move to pay the bills.
Second.
$420.55.
Wait.
Get a $400.
That's in 2 weeks?
$420.55.
We've had
There's a
to
motion
post
on
a
the
lot of
table.
public hearings in the local newspapers.
We could do this online. We could do this with...
Also a lot
I
of...
think state law says you have
Talk to your legislators.
Right. Well, we know that the newspaper lobby is talking to the legislators also. And I'm sure that new budget of ours is going to...
I have no second, Mr. Chairman.
I seconded it.
Oh, you were.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We have some minutes that were presented from the May 20th meeting, the regular meeting. I have had an opportunity to look at them, and they do look right. Has anyone else had an opportunity to look and review them?
I reviewed them.
And they look substantially correct. I will move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'm abstaining.
Okay, well, it's still carried in spite of your abstinence. Do we have a motion?
Yep, motion to adjourn. Sure do.
Second.
All those in favor? Good night, everybody.